Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cup of Joe with Joe and Joe podcast. I am your host, Joe, and with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Joe.
Anime makes the world go round, baby. It really does.
It really do. It really do, baby boo.
That was a good rhyme.
Thank you. I was gonna finish it off with we're here to talk about Samurai Champloo. So what you gonna do? Scooby-Doo.
Poo.
Oh, or that. Yeah, I guess either one of those works. Hello, everyone. Anime edition of Cup of Joe, Joe and Joe, episode 27, Point Trace. We're here to talk about episodes 10 through 18 of Samurai Champloo. This is part 2 of a 3-part, I was going to say saga, but then I was like, no, and then I was going to say trilogy, and I'm like, that's redundant. So we just have whatever I'm doing right now. 3-part series. There we go. If you missed episode or part 1 of whatever we're doing, just look back we have an anime playlist and on the channel. You can just click into that and look for 26.3 or whatever. So that we discussed episode 1 through 9, where I was little lukewarm on this series so far. So then we come to part 2, where I'm less lukewarm on this series so far, because I think it's getting better, as Joe hinted at last week. I can confirm I did enjoy this better than the first third that we watched.
Yeah, almost every episode, besides the recap episode, but even then the recap episode's a little funny. Not that much. But almost every episode in this little section that we're doing, episodes 10 through 18, is definitely better. Like we get a lot more new characters, a lot more backstory, specifically with Mugen. My favorite part of all this is Mugen's backstory. I think his origin's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems a lot more interesting. And so I have I followed a similar path of what you did for the first section, where it's maybe like 1 or 2 words for each episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess let's just start off with episode 10, which I don't know what it was. Maybe it's just because I got more settled into how things were with the series, but I thought back to some of the other things. I'm like, no, this one just seems better in general, because this is the serial samurai killer.
The street killer, yeah.
Yeah. And he's cool, and also using, like, Dragon Ball techniques in some of his stuff. I was like,
wink,
whoa! Wink. It was so cool. But yeah, so like this one is just, it just seemed cooler. Also, the transitions in this one, the way like the lines went across the screen and like moved with what I don't know what you call it when you DJ and like you're scratching the record. The way it moved with that, I was like, that's nice. I don't know if I mentioned it in the last part, but especially the first episode, the way they like did the scene transitions, same way to like the scratching of a record, was so weird and like off-putting to me. Like it didn't flow very well. This one though, the way they changed it up for this, I was like, this is significantly better in every way. So I was very happy going into episode 10 with something that was just of a higher quality in general.
Yes, and we get a cooler villain, quote unquote. It's not just, I want to get revenge for you for cutting off my arm and I'm a big scary guy. Like it's not like that. Like this is like we get a good backstory of who this guy is, why he's doing what he's doing. I find the Buddhist or the Zen Buddhist priest really funny, making them do all the chores, and it's a cool fight because Mugen's like, I don't know if I can beat this dude. And he actually takes some time and practice, because up until this point, Mugen, the only person that has given Mugen a good fight was Gene in the first episode. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so Street Killer, although he doesn't come back, he's a pretty cool character.
Okay, then moving on to 11, when 11 hit, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I can see that this show is getting better, because this is the episode where Gene meets Shino, who is a woman who is married to a man, and that man is in debt because he has a gambling problem, and so she needs to go be a prostitute to pay off her husband's debts. And I was like, feudal Japan is kind of fucked up, isn't it? um, and this one, I think it was the best episode for Gene so far. Like, it was the most compelling he's been.
Yeah, I completely agree. This episode's all about Gene. This is about Gene's. I have written down Gene's love, and it's, I don't know, like, part of me, I thought they were, when I first watched it, I thought they were gonna go down the road of like, oh, he's gonna pay the money just so he could talk to this girl like in the brothel. Like, oh, like you ever read Catcher in the Rye?
Yeah, I hated it, but I know what you'd seen
I
referring
hated
to.
I hated it as well. But it reminded me, I'm like, oh, they're gonna do like the Catcher in the Rye where he pays for a prostitute, but just ends up talking to her. But no, Gene's like, no, we're gonna fuck.
I didn't see that coming. I was like, he's just going to be like an honorable guy and not care. But then when they start kissing, I was like, oh. And then, he wakes up and they're in bed together. And I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, it definitely was a bit surprising, but I liked it. I was like, okay. I'm like, wow, that surprised me. You're doing good. And there was also a funny line in this where Mugen kind of says the whole time that he thought Gene was gay.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see how a lot of people would also have that similar ideal because he's very stoic and like does not seem to care for the ladies at all. But here it's obviously proven otherwise. So I just found, I didn't like how that was. That was funny. And then we go from what I wrote down as the most compelling episode so far to a fucking recap episode.
Yeah, well, like it's just. They find a place to hang out. Foo's in the hot spring, and they're like, "Oh, let's read her diary." Haha, funny recap. There's really nothing special about that besides the fact that we're getting an idea that Gene and Mugen are like, "Why the fuck are we doing this again?" Like they're questioning the motive.
Yeah, definitely. Which I guess was cool. I'm gonna be honest. I watched maybe the first 5 minutes of this and I was like, is this just a recap episode?
Mm-hmm.
And I skipped to the end and then I saw that it was a recap episode and I was like, okay. And then I just clicked to the next episode. I did not watch this.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm more of a purist, so I watched the whole thing. I watched the Bount arc, everybody. I do it.
I mean, I watched the Bount arc, but I'm never rewatching it. Different anime.
I'm saying I will rewatch it. If I
Okay.
were to watch Bleach, I'd do it, Joe. I'm a purist. Pure.
Okay. Anyway, we then move on to probably two of the best episodes so far.
Yes.
I'm combining 13 and 14 into one solid
Good,
chunk because
good.
this is
Yep.
this is where we get to Mugen's past, where whatchamacallit, they arrive at the beach and then there's that girl, and at first when she makes eye contact with Mugen and the gang, I was just like, oh, she's going to be terrified and run away or something like that. And then she calls his name, and I was like, oh, wait, what the fuck? And then all the other, like, bandits show up. And that was the other thing that I found weird about this. I don't know what time period this takes place in. I'm sure it's easy enough to figure out. But also, the main guy of the gangs... Yeah, the main guy in the gang, like the head guy, I don't remember what his name is. He has a revolver, and I'm like, guns exist? At this point in the timeline?
Yes. Yep. So that's the second note I have. I have these two episodes are Mugen's backstory. First one's the first part of his backstory, and the second one's part two. But then the other note I have is guns. Like we find out that there are guns in this world, which maybe they're pushing it with the revolver, but guns were. I mean, we talked about it when we talked about Princess Mononoke. Like they were invented pretty fast, and this is our first time seeing them, so it is a little surprising. I believe they do show up once or twice later in the series. Don't quote me.
No, because they have shown up once or twice since then. I don't remember which episodes, but I remember being like, okay, so there's at least one, and they weren't revolvers. They were, I think, like rifles. But
Yes.
there are other guns in this.
Yeah, when they go to execute Mugen, when we see his backstory, they had rifles.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
So, yes, we find out that guns are a part of this world at this point, and we get a little bit of Mugen's backstory, which is that are they called the Ryoku Islands? Did I get that right? Do you have it written down?
I don't have it written down, but that sounds correct.
Yeah, I probably pronounced it wrong or got it closely wrong, but basically it were these islands off of Japan that they would send all the criminals to. And Mugen and these two other characters, I forget their name, they were born and raised there. And the girl is telling Fu all this because Mugen he basically acts like he doesn't know what these people are talking about. He's just like, don't fuck around with me. I don't want to deal with your bullshit. And you find out that he was raised in hell, basically the equivalent of hell, just surrounded by terrible people, by criminals. And we get flashes that he did something to get warranted execution, and we find out later on that Mokaru or Mokura or it's something along those lines is his quote unquote no.
Mokuba, you've been kidnapped again. I swear to God, I'm not coming over there to rescue you. But Kaiba, why?
It's something along those lines. We find out in the past that they're kind of pirates almost, and they stole from like an Imperial State ship, and they blamed it on Mugen, and he was supposed to get murdered, and he jumped off a cliff, and he somehow survived. I don't know. Mugen's basically the devil.
He has the power of God and anime on his side, Joe.
Yes, and in these 2 episodes, we find out that basically Mugen lets his ego get ahead of him. We find out about his backstory and the shit that he's done, because it seems we thought he was pretty fucked up and had no mercy, but there's one scene of him where he walks out of a fire and he's covered in blood, and I'm like, okay. And so we find out he's pretty intense, and it goes down the same path that this dude sets up Mugen again on another heist and blames it all on him, and he actually blows up Mugen's ship, and it's insinuated, oh shit, he probably died because it fucking exploded. But you can't kill Mugen that easily.
No, you can't. And that's the end of part 1, which then brings us into part 2, episode 14, which begins with one of the weirdest fever dreams in anime that I've ever seen.
Yeah, Joe. I want to actually get your input on this because I kind of love it. Like, I think it's really fucking cool. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Obviously, I'm insinuating is kind of like, oh, he's seeing the light. Like, he's getting ready to go up to heaven, but he's like, I'm not ready. But, like, what the fuck are those things that he's seeing?
Yeah, I don't know. But like I started off not liking this. I was like, this is fucking weird, because it goes on it's a long thing too. Like it's not like a minute. It's like 5 minutes or something like that. So it's like you're in this fever dream thing where he's dying and like presumably going to the afterlife. And like you said, there's a moment where he sees these beings and he says something like, "Not you guys again. Like, I'm not ready." And then he like rescends back into like the water, going, I'm assuming, back to his body.
They kind of copied the Ghost in the Shell scene. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. I was like, yeah, I kind of see that going on here. But it's basically, I'm sure there's plenty of symbolism in there that us smooth brains didn't pick up on. But it's really interesting and intriguing. And then, he washes up on shore and he's found by... Is it Fu? I can't remember.
Yeah, remember the fisherman? He's like,
yes.
Oh, there's a dead body.
Dead guy, yeah, there's a dead body. And then he starts coughing, and Fu's like, holy shit, he's alive. So they start nursing him back to health. And then so he goes off to do his own thing. Meanwhile, Jean and Fu are told by the sister of the guy who fucked over Mugen. She's like, all right, he's going to be here. You have to kill him for me, please. He's an awful person. I can't live with him anymore. And so Jean goes along, and he meets up with the asshole. And so the sister of the asshole goes into the building because she's meeting up with some guy for something. Like, it's some sort of, like, trade or something like that.
He was the internal guy on the ship that they were trying to steal. He was their, what is the word I'm looking for? He was like this, the mole.
Yeah. And so in return for his information, he was going to get asshole's sister. So that's what was going on there. And so Jean, because he's like, you killed the guy I was going to kill. There's a real quick battle between him and asshole guy. Of course, Jean wins because you don't bring a gun to a sword fight, as everyone knows in ancient Japan. And he opens the door because Asshole's like, "Oh man, we were both of us idiots." And you realize that the mole and the sister have run away. Turns out they've been in cahoots, sonny. So they were kind of like, I guess, doing their own plans behind everything. So that's when Mugen meets up with them, which I was like, this was I think my favorite part of the episode, where there's a shambling Mugen because he's still very injured. And so he's just using his sword as like a walking cane and just slowly walking up to the mole and the sister. And the mole like draws his sword and he's just like, "Stop coming closer, dude." And he just keeps walking closer and walking closer. And then in an instant, he just unsheathes his sword and cuts him down. And he's just like bleeding out on the ground. And the sister can't move. And I'm like, run away. And she's just standing there petrified as Mugen is shambling towards her with his sword drawn. And I'm just like, this is horrifying. This is absolutely terrifying. Because I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do. But instead of cutting her down, he just walks away, which I then realize is even more terrifying because earlier in, I think, part 1, the sister says, the only reason that I don't kill my brother or like beg for my brother to be killed by like other people is because I know without him I wouldn't be able to live on my own. And so like she's very dependent on having someone else. And the fact that the brother's dead, Mugen just killed the person that she was going to become dependent on, and he leaves her. He basically just leaves her to die.
Yeah, I'm super happy you picked up on that because the first time I watched it, I didn't pick up on the significance of it. I picked up more of it. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, is Mugen showing mercy? But the second time through, I'm like, oh, no. That's him being sick in his own fucked up way. Yeah. And Joe, I got to say, you missed my favorite part of that scene.
Oh,
and I'm surprised you didn't say it. The fucking drums, Joe. The music.
That's right, yeah.
It literally, it sounds like fucking Caravan from Whiplash. I know it isn't. It sounds a little similar, but that music makes it 10 times disturbing.
Yeah, it's chaotic and intense, and you have no idea what's going to happen. It just adds to the scene and just makes it that much better. But these two, episode 13 and 14, are by far and away, as of right now, my favorite episodes in the series so far.
Okay, wow. I'm really happy to hear that because I enjoy them too. And I said it in the first part. I'm like, Mugen's backstory is pretty cool. The fact that he basically was raised in hell and he somehow is this devil almost.
Yeah.
Kind of. You like that hint to Attack on Titan? So now we move to 15, which is also I really like this episode because this has one of my favorite characters, which I wish she came back. Oh my god, this has my girl. No, my girl Yatsuha.
Yatsuha, no, and she's voiced by Rukia.
I know, she's so fucking awesome, dude.
I also like this episode. I didn't, because the only thing I have written down to identify this episode is Lake Gold. And I'm like, what the hell is the Lake Gold episode again? And then I'm like, right, it's that. Because that is some of my favorite stuff also.
Yes. So they're out fishing, our three trio, and Fu and Mugen are really good at it. And Jean, they're making fun of Jean because Jean can't catch shit. And so Jean starts swimming through the water like a fucking comes out and he's like, look what I found, bitches. And it's like a shit ton of gold coins. Really, really expensive stuff. And they end up the boys end up going to the red light district, which if you've listened to the song Roxanne, you know what that's about. And Fu gets extra fat from her food.
Yep.
And so she goes off, and girls aren't allowed to go in the red light district, so they're like, okay, we're gonna go have some fun. And they go to a brothel. All the girls are ugly besides one of them, and they do a really funny rock paper scissors thing where Mugen wins, and they go off to have some fun. But at the same time, I forgot to mention that I think is the beginning of the episode where the guy's being chased by the ninjas. I think that's where the episode
Yeah,
starts.
that's the beginning of that
Okay.
episode, and it's
Yeah.
the animation in that. It's like
Wow.
insane in comparison to a
Oh
lot of the
yeah.
previous stuff.
Yeah, and the ninjas look fucking scary as shit
They're
when they're just showing their
terrifying.
eyes. Oh my god, and the movement, like the ninjas in Naruto, which I mean they're all ninjas, like some of them they do a good job making them scary, but these motherfuckers are fucking wild. They kind of remind me a little bit of the Tengu from the earlier episodes. In part one that we talked about, where like the warrior priests were like raising all the weed,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
kind of their movement where it was very fast. But these guys, you saw their eyes and they were creepy as shit, and they're looking for this dude, and we find out he's the one that threw the coins in the river, and we don't really know why, and we jump to the brothel, and Mugen's with this really attractive girl, and they're about to go have some fun, and the guy that walks him into the room then walks into a side room, and it's like this shady like mob boss scene, and you're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, and he's just like, okay, so these coins were handed in by these patrons, and so there be something going on here. And in the other room with Mugen, and as we come to know her, Yatsuha, she's listening in like through the wall. She's trying to be like, oh shit, what's going on? But Mugen is very much like, okay, time to go, like as in not leave, but as in do a sex. And she's like, yeah, totally, let's do it. And so like he gets on top of her, and then you just like they fall out of frame, and then you just see her arm grab the vase, and I'm just like, God, Mugen, every time you try to fuck someone, every time.
Yep. Every
And she
fucking time.
smashes him over the head with it, and I'm just like, there's no way he's out from that. And sure enough, he gets back up, and he's just like, a little rough, but I can play that way. And she's just like, what the hell? You're still awake? And she's like, okay, I'll still try and play this off. Um, yeah, let's how about it? And she like starts trying to fight him or something, and he's just dodging her and like doing all this stuff, and then he pins her up against a wall, and I'm just like, yeah, Mugen is probably way more skilled than her, especially when he's this hopped up on hormones. And she's just like, okay, counter proposal. Instead of doing a sex here and now, how about we go over there and do something? And so he, eventually brings her into like the room that all the people were talking, and then she's like, oh, actually down here. And he's like, okay. And he puts her on his shoulders, and he just leaps down and lands amongst the gangsters' operations. And she's basically just like, all right, I found you. Everything in here is illegal. Also, you're all under arrest. Haha. And he's like, the mob boss is all like, there's like, I've got 20 soldiers down here, and there's two of you. And I'm just like, in my head, and I was just thinking, we have a Hulk, because it's basically Black Widow and the Hulk, where it's like, she's Black Widow, and then he's the Hulk, and she's just aiming him at all of her problems, which is exactly what she does in this scenario, where she's just like, all right, take them all out. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. And she whispers in his ear, like, okay, but I'll do this to you if you help me take them out. And he's like, oh, okay. And so Mugen's just unleashed on all these guys, and Yatsuha takes out a few of them, but Mugen's the real powerhouse, just going around and just like fucking everyone up, and I love that. It's so funny.
Yeah, I found it hilarious where he's like, wait a minute, you're doing a lot of talk but not showing anything. And she whispers in his ear, and his like tongue hangs out. He's like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Oh yeah. And they beat the shit out of him. And yeah, that scene's great. It's fucking awesome. And they arrest him, and you're like, okay, that was kind of cool. And also, her design is fucking sick. She looks awesome.
She does look pretty cool. And so the episode ends with like they win, they get the bad guy or whatever. But then because Mugen was just like, all right, time to pay up, and then she smacks him in the back of the head like as hard as you could possibly could, and just conks him out. And so she and the guy that was running in the beginning, like they're the two spies or whatever, and they leave him at a tree. She's like, yeah, he has friends. They'll come get him. Besides, I'm going to come back someday and marry that guy. And I was just like, oh? And the other guy was also like, oh? And she's like, yeah, I guess I kind of fell for him throughout all that stuff. And I'm like, cool. So I got excited thinking she might come back. But I guess she doesn't come back.
I know. That's the one thing I wanted so bad because I love her fucking character. The fact that she's voiced by Rukia, she's good looking and also fucking tough as hell, and she definitely matches Mugen's personality.
Yeah, I like that where she wasn't just like some I don't know, I guess pushover in personality would be the best way to describe it. She actually was like, nah, this is me, and I'm just, instead of being like, I don't know, just like a girly girl type of thing, kind of like Fu was more of like a girly girl-esque kind of thing. She was more so like, okay, I am of the similar mindset to Mugen, where it's like, I'm clever, and I will use my cleverness to aim your horniness and frustration at all the unsuspecting people.
Exactly. Well, the next two episodes are another part 1 and part 2. And these are dealing with my man Okaru, or Okaru, however you, Okaru. Oh, I think it's Okaru.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Okaru.
The archer in the woods. And Joe, what do you think about these episodes? Because this is another character where I think, give me 2 episodes, you get a little bit of backstory. I find him interesting. There's some good fight scenes. Like, I don't know. Like these 2 episodes, I'm like, this makes me happy. I enjoy this.
Yeah, that's similar to how I feel. It starts in medias res. I just like being able to say that because it makes me feel smart. Where the end is the beginning, and then we see how we get there. But yeah, I feel similar to you. Where like they make me happy. They're nothing that's like, they're not the worst of the show. They're not the best. They're just 2 solid episodes where you kind of follow. You know, the team does the thing when they split up, and then they come back together, and they kind of go on their own. They go, continue going on their adventure to find the Samurai Smells of Sunflowers. And everything in the middle, I was kind of like, these are cool moments, like when whatever the force that finds Mugen and mistake him for Okaru, and then he takes them all on, and he's like, hey, you got the wrong guy, but I'll still kick all your asses. And like, okay, he's not him, and they run off. And then Fu meeting Okaru and having that little interaction with him fleshes him out a little bit more, makes things a little bit more gray, and you find out his backstory and all that sort of stuff. And all the stuff with Jean, which Jean's backstory seems like it would be one of the most compelling to me, but the way they've handled it so far, it's rather boring. So I'm hoping they do a little bit more with that as
part
time
3,
goes
baby.
on. Okay,
Part 3.
I'm crossing my fingers for part 3 then. But yeah, he's got his little thing. But I don't know. I don't feel like going too much into these 2 episodes because really they're just kind of nice, and that's about it.
Yeah, the coolest thing, a part of these episodes, at least my favorite part, was seeing Jean. Jean has to kill another. So we find out earlier in the season that Jean killed his master, and now all the other students from the dojo want to exact revenge on Jean for killing the master, which is true. He did kill him, and this is one of them who is out to kill Jean, and we actually find out that this guy and Jean were really good friends, and that Jean treated this guy as his little brother almost. So it definitely has more impact of just, oh, I'm a bad guy or I'm a guy and you're a bad guy, I got to get revenge on you. And it's just another cool fight. Like it has a little bit more weight, even though they don't add too much time to it. But like I said, in the part 3, in these later episodes is where we get more of Jean's backstory. Like I'm pretty sure I didn't watch episode 19 today yet. I think I might do this after the recording. But I think around the 19 and 20 mark, like the early 20s, is when we get more of Jean's backstory.
Okay, cool. So I will be interested to see us get into that. Yeah, and then we get into episode 18, which is just a fun episode. It's just the crew are in some town, and you run into a couple of characters. It's a bunch of like graffiti and stuff. We finally run into the fact that Mugen can't read, and he's like been ordering the same thing as either Jean or Fu at every restaurant because he can't read any of the stuff, and he's too proud to, admit that he can't read and that sort of stuff. And finally, I love the teacher that's just like, I'm gonna teach you, and he knows exactly how to handle Mugen because he's like, oh, I can see this is too tough for you, and obviously you can't do it. And then Mugen's just like, obviously that strikes a nerve with him, where he's like, what the fuck do you mean I can't? Of course I can do this. And so within a day, he teaches Mugen how to read, and I'm just like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. Finally, Mugen knows how to read. And then you also have the two characters that are like the two brothers that are fighting or feuding or whatever because they're better taggers or something like that. I'm just like, okay, cool. But my favorite character was Anime Warhol.
Fucking Anime Warhol. I know. I love the all the pop culture references in this show.
It's very good. But other than that, it's just the episode where Mugen learns how to read, and a couple of brothers lose their tagging match because, as it turns out, Mugen is the best at tagging as well.
Yeah, it's a fun episode. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a good thing to watch. There's some funny moments. It's cool. It's one of those things where it's like they take a lot of modern things that happen and they try and jokingly, I don't know if there is any, I don't think there is any historical context to any of this stuff, but they try and add like significant historical context to like, oh, this originated in Japan actually, like with the ukiyo-e paintings in the first part with Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah.
Like they
like
do
that
that
stuff.
so much, like this is where it happened with this. They did it with the graffiti art that Andy Warhol takes them back and they become like street fashion icons.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do it a bunch of times. I think it happens like one or two more times in this next section, but I find it funny.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So overall, the second part I'd say is a massive step up from part one, the first 9 episodes that is. So I'm happy about that, and I can say I haven't been like itching to get on to the final 8 episodes. I am saying I'm looking forward to it now, as opposed to last week where I was just sort of like, yeah, okay, whatever. Now I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to get through the next couple of these. So that's nice.
Yeah, no, I completely get what you're saying. And this being my second time through, I'm excited to kind of see what it's like after the kind of like the surprise of it all is done. Like the first time I watch it, it's like, oh, this is brand new to me, and that whenever something is brand new to you, you're always more inclined to be like, oh yeah, well it wasn't that bad. But once you kind of watch it with clearer eyes the second time, you can kind of point out the stuff where you're like, well, it actually wasn't that good. So I'm excited to see how I think of the whole thing after this next session, after watching it this week. But we got 7 or 8 episodes left, and there's some pretty good ones. I don't think there's that much filler left. I think it's pretty much we're either finding out more about Jean's backstory, more about the samurai who smells of sunflowers, and yeah, I'm excited to see what the rest of this is like.
Yeah, me too. Alrighty then. So with that, I shall tell you all, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, do all that wonderful, beautiful stuff. Be sure to tune in next week for part 3, the final part, where we go through episode 19 through 26. Yeah, and that shall be it from all of us. So with that, I shall love you, and I'll leave you, and goodbye.